He's going to do a talk called The Future of Privacy, Private and Permissionless Systems Without Black Hats. So we're going to give a huge round of applause for Adam Gagol.
Hello everyone, I'm Adam from Aleph Zero, and I'm going to talk about privacy, a bit about attributability. I'm not really going to talk about compliance. The particular agenda is, first, I'll show some trade-offs between privacy, transparency, and attributability. The second, I quickly introduce to some currently explored approaches to anonymity on the blockchain. And finally, I'd outline the idea of merging anonymity with protection against mixing illicit funds. So first, to provide some kind of like a background, when it comes to the flavors of privacy that we have on the blockchain, kind of by default, we have pseudonymity. This is something that I think everyone is very used to. This is like since the times of Bitcoins, we don't have like real names on the blockchain, we have addresses, which at least initially I think looked anonymous enough, so people thought that, well, since it's only like a random identifier, like the Bitcoin transactions are kind of anonymous. Right now we already are well aware that that's not true. There are specific companies which the entire business model of tracking Bitcoin transactions and transactions on the other chain. So in practice, most of these identifiers can be attached to at least IP address, or like in many cases the real legal name of the user. So the second level of privacy that we can have is anonymity. So in anonymity, instead of seeing specific identifiers for each users, we just see the type of action that happened, with no indication whatsoever about who did that or whether it was related to any other action or not. This lack of relation is called unlinkability. It's actually the most important aspect when it comes to tracking. So why we can track transactions on the Bitcoin is because one transfer is related to another. I mean, we can see that these funds went from address A to B and then from B to C. If we don't have linkability, there is no tracking possible. And the strongest flavor is like full privacy, where we just see that something happens. This is not very common in blockchain setting. So during the talk, I'm going to focus on these two first flavors and something in between them. And I'm going to use two guiding examples here. Both are like bad behaviors of the system. So first one is what happens on most chains, including Ethereum. So like this is transaction traceback. So whenever I send some amount of ETH or another token to a friend, he can basically backtrack the transaction to my address and see entire history of spending from my address. So I would imagine most of you, same as me, are using different addresses for different purposes, just for the sake of not being kind of spied by, well, our friends and enemies. So this is, of course, horrible user experience. And by the way, I think many people are using centralized exchanges as kind of like a mixing devices to break the linkability. This is very much centralized way of like achieving even basic privacy. So like very, very much unwanted. So this is the like bad example coming from lack of privacy. And then there is privacy abuse, cryptographic money laundering. So, like this is a, I think, well-known example. Lazarus Group, connected to North Korea, hacks Axie Infinity. Then they deposit funds into one of the mixers, in this case, that was Tornado Cash, and the trace is effectively lost. I mean, they are literally going away with stealing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of tokens. So this is kind of like a privacy abuse. Yes, we do not want to be spied upon by our friends. We do not necessarily want also North Korea to fund, well, whatever fund with stolen funds. So that seems pretty contradictory. Like, we don't want good people to be spied upon, but we do want bad people. I mean, who decides which are which? So, but before we go into the solutions, let's explore a slightly deeper how private are actually the basic solutions. So When it comes to normal pseudonymous transfers, well, this is some kind of like imaginary situation. So here, easily we can identify parties because they are using the same set of addresses. So what do we do here? Let's say that party B is like, and that's us. Let's say we wanted to remain anonymous, but we send these 3 transfers. And let's say that party A is a well-known employer, and party C is a well-known hacker house. So, well, basically, like this pattern already, I mean, this is of course a toy scenario, but this pattern already allows to identify us at least to high extent. I mean, like, yes, so we are employer of this particular, we are employee of this particular employer based in this particular place. And that's only from the transaction pattern. Then we can go one step higher, which is not full anonymity, but this is an idea to enhance at least anonymity in some way. The idea is called stealth addresses on Ethereum. And it's a cryptographic primitive. Without going into details, it mimics the process of creating a fresh address for every new operation. So we never use the same address twice, and it allows like a convenient way for someone to send us funds into also freshly generated address without asking us for this particular address. So it's like a clever cryptographic way mimicking the best possible use of new address creation. So surely it's better. So it's much harder. I mean, we can still cluster, of course, the transactions of these 2 parties, but it's not. Oh, sorry. It's not so easy to cluster transactions of party B. So, like in some cases, we may be able to identify something based on just like timings, but by default, it's not so easy to tell that this party B is actually a single party. So it does give some privacy because it's harder to cluster things, but it does not actually solve our guiding scenario. I mean, we can still backtrack transactions, as we're going to see in the next slide. So how a black hat sees private transfers. So when it comes to Ethereum's stealth address, basically the situation with black hats is usually that like there is some big well-known hack, and then the funds from the hack are deposited into some particular address, and everyone can see that because this is a public address on a public blockchain. And then black hats want to do something about it. I mean, like somehow mix it with something or hide it. So when it comes to stealth addresses, this is just not possible. I mean, they can generate fresh addresses all the time, but like the graph, we can always backtrack the transactions. So like wherever the funds will go, we can always see that, yeah, these are the funds originating from the hack. So like Ethereum stealth addresses doesn't help at all for this kind of money laundering. Unfortunately, it doesn't help much with our problems as a user either, because like if we send some funds to our friend, he can also backtrack the transaction and well see our history to some extent. When like there are also like fully private platforms with fully private transfers or solutions allowing for that, like for example mentioned Tornado Cash, Railgun. In Aleph Zero we are working on a shielder. Of course, the same idea is Zcash shielded transfers. And here, like, if there is no particular fraud protection, the situation looks like this. So there is this well-known by everyone address with illicit funds deposited. Then these funds go to this magical cryptographic box, and if they sit there long enough, and you can basically drop the funds out of it kind of anonymously and unlinkably. So effectively, the trace is lost. So what would we like to achieve with this kind of like a merged attributability anonymity system? So we would like to preserve transaction privacy for regular users. So we don't want to be picked upon by like whoever we interact with on the blockchain. And we would like to somehow disallow mixing illicit funds. So first, the more naive idea for the potential solution. So let's think about a system where it works as a classical like a mixing solution, but we always send info about what we do to some kind of like a committee of the guys which are keeping all this information. They can keep it like in a secret sharing form, so like a lot of them need to actually collaborate to reveal anything. And if we don't, I mean, they need to kind of like accredit every operation. So if we don't actually provide them correct data, like we will not be able to do anything in this system. And then, like, the idea is that like whenever there is like a request to reveal transfers originating somewhere at some illicit address, these guys, well, they do that. I mean, they reveal some particular part of what was hidden. So, I mean, it kind of works, but that's cheating also. And in particular, this committee, they have like a really big power in this system. They can basically reveal everything, and what's even worse, they can reveal everything and no one will know about it. So, like, of course, one of the problems is like collusion for the, let's say, based on the government request or something like that. But the other problem is like economical arguments for collusion. I mean, they may do that for the sake of, for example, front-running the orders, or for the sake of some other like complicated DeFi things. So it may be the case that there is actually a very good business model for them for revealing everything and not telling anyone about it. Like either it's taking bribes from some interested party or directly interacting with DeFi based on this revealed information. So yes, in a way, this system has these two properties, but it introduces pretty complex, like game theoretical thing here, and well, it's also with the transaction privacy. It's usually the thing that we would like this transfer to never be revealed, like not even in 20 years, and like what's gonna happen with this committee in 20 years? Hard to say. I mean, like they may, of course, cease working as this particular committee, and they will still have this secret. So these secrets can be revealed post factum then, which is also a problem. So we don't want to introduce a privileged third party, or at least not as privileged to be able to reveal everything on demand. And this already, kind of like at the first glance, it looks impossible. I mean, yes, so we do not want to reveal anything about normal users. We do want to reveal something about like illicit funds, and we don't want to have a third party which decides which is which. So, of course, we're not going to have a perfect solution here. We're looking for like a good trade-off. A good trade-off is, sometimes it's referred to as proof of innocence. So what's the idea? The idea is that we do have this mixing device. By the way, you can think about it as a mixer, but like nowadays, this solutions became more and more general. Like our Schilder, for example, is able to work with arbitrary denominations. So it's not only a mixer like in case of old school Tornado Cash. Basically, you can keep all your tokens at all times at this particular magical box. So basically, you can think about it as your private wallet. There is no reason for you to keep funds anywhere else but this private box. So basically, every transfer you initiate can be anonymous. And how this proof of innocence thing works. So yes, we do need to have some specific party which will say which addresses are illicit. But as we're going to see, the power is much less of this power of the party is much less in this system. So whenever there is a hack which is identified and there is an address doing deposit to the system, this address ends on like a sanctioned oracle. There is an on-chain contract which holds all the addresses which are identified to be related to the hacks and such. And then, whenever a user wants to do withdrawal, he provides a proof, a zero-knowledge proof, that these funds did not originate at any of the addresses on the oracle. So this is zero-knowledge proof, meaning that this proof does not provide any other information above what I just said, that these funds did not have anything to do with addresses on the oracle. And yes, and like there are two options basically for users. So either they provide this proof that they are innocent, or if for some reason they cannot provide this proof, I mean, like, of course, like what can be the reason? The reason is that, of course, the funds are originating in one of these addresses. Well, we do not actually freeze these funds. The other option is always they can reveal everything. So like if they reveal the trace, they can always withdraw. So there is like no fund freezing. But, well, if they are not able to provide the proof of innocence, they cannot use it as a mixing device. So that's the general scheme. Of course, it's pretty complex. In particular, this proof, I didn't make a deposit from any of these addresses. This is called non-inclusion proof, and like technically, it's a pretty tricky thing to be proven, but possible. Maybe two more like things that may be not clear from the system. So, of course, first thing is who controls the list of these problematic addresses. So yes, it requires a controller. So there is a privileged party in the system. What's important is that this party cannot reveal anything, and in particular, every reveal is kind of public because they need to publish this address on the oracle. So like they cannot just reveal everything and don't tell anyone about it. Everything they do is public, which holds them attributable. And like the second question is like, so what if hacker deposits and quickly withdraws before even the address ends on the blacklist? So yes, this is possible, but like if any of you ever read more about the mixers, like basically they doesn't mix fund. I mean, to mix funds, you need to sit in the mixer for a longer time. If you deposit like $100 million and 5 minutes later you withdraw $100 million, like this is pretty obvious to link these two actions. So like when we are talking about these most problematic cases, these are almost always very big amounts. And for example, in this year, Railgun protocol on Ethereum, again, Lazarus Group tried to mix their, I think something about like 200 million. They have been sitting in the Railgun for half a year, and that was not enough. I mean, like it was possible to link deposits and withdrawals, even though it took half a year to kind of anonymize, and that was not enough to anonymize such a big amount. So yeah, I mean, this is a trade-off, obviously. As I said, there is a privileged party here, although much less powerful. Thank you. So when it comes to the questions, what do? I just read here. What would be the difference in heuristic on-chain analysis between Bitcoin and stealth addresses? So the difference is that on Bitcoin, like if someone is not a privacy-conscious user, probably this person is using a single address on Bitcoin, meaning like the single key. And then it's super obvious to find entire live history of the transaction. We can just see every UTXO which was ever created with this particular key, and we see everything. When it comes to the stealth addresses, it is not, I mean, it's still backtrackable, but the difference is that that we cannot tell whether the funds have been transferred between user A and user B, or whether it was the same user. So, like, if it was the same private key, it is obvious that that's the same user. And in the case of stealth addresses, like, we cannot, I mean, it's slightly harder to cluster users. I mean, it may happen that I had some funds, and then I did an operation after which they ended up on a different address, but this is still my address. And in other scenario, this is address of another party. So we cannot easily tell which of these scenarios is it. So it's like harder to just find entire history of a single user. Some things can still be identified. I think that's the only question from the system. So yep.
Does the zero knowledge proof have an expiry date? Because otherwise, once they deposit the funds, they get the proof, and they can withdraw maybe 6 months after.
So like the proof is per withdrawal. Like each time we want to do withdrawal, we need to generate this proof. So
But I mean, time constraint. If it's not time constraint, the proof, you prove I'm not in the blacklist, but you don't submit the zero knowledge proof.
oh, okay. Yeah, you always need to prove that you are not in the current blacklist. I mean, yes, I mean the blacklist is time-stamped, and like if you want to do withdrawal now, you need to prove that you are not in the current blacklist from this timestamp. So like in the sense, yes, of course it has this like understanding of time in a way. And by the way, we are out of time, so thank you very much.